Okay, so in this video, I'm going to look at more difficult examples of factoring trinomials. So I'm just going to show you, so I've got these 5 examples that I'm going to go through, and I'm going to talk about just like all the different trinomial techniques that I've talked about so far. So I'm assuming if you're watching this that you are familiar with the trinomial techniques, but you just kind of want some more inspiration of maybe how to go about these. And also, I haven't worked these out in advance, so you're going to see kind of how I like think through some of this. Okay, so for this first one, so I've got 5x squared minus 21x plus 18. Okay, so personally, I think the best way that I would start this, honestly, was I would probably just try trial and error with this, because this term here is, I can at least easily figure out how to multiply to make this. So I know for sure to get 5x squared, that's going to be 5x and x. And then I can just try to like figure out what would be a good choice to make 18. Okay, so thinking what I know about the fact that this needs to be positive 18 and this needs to be negative 21. So that is going to kind of like, I guess I'm going to try to think through what kind of numbers I want to have bounced off of the 5. Okay, so factors of 18 would be 2 times 9 or 3 times 6, right? So when I think about this, I don't want to make this like too high of a middle term. So like I wouldn't want to bounce this 9 off of this 5, right? Because that's going to make too high of a number. But I could bounce, let's say, the 5 off of like the 3. So, and the other thing is, so this is positive, but this is negative. So a negative times a negative will make a positive. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce the 3 off of the 5. Okay, so check that out. So now let's see. I've got 5x squared minus 15x minus 6x plus 18. Okay, and so that comes out to the negative 21, right? So that's like how you can kind of utilize trial and error to make like better guesses. And, you know, the worst that happens is that there's only so many factors of 18. And since you know that this has to be positive, you know that both factors have to be negative to make the middle term negative. So there's only so many combinations that you can kind of go through, but that's like how you can kind of utilize trial and error to make, I guess, better guesses. All right, so let's go to the next one. So now I've got 10x squared minus 23x plus 12. Okay, so I honestly would probably just try to use trial and error with this, but this is an example video and I kind of want to touch on all of the different types of examples. So I'm actually going to use grouping for this one. So the idea with grouping is that I'm going to take 10 times 12 to get 120. So I need 2 things that multiply to 120, but will add to negative 23. Once again, this is positive, so I know that both factors have to be negative because the negative times the negative will make a positive. Okay, so factors of 120 that would add to negative 23. Let's just think about the positives for a second. So 10 and 12 are not going to work. So what about 6 and 20? Okay, still won't work, right? Okay, fine. What about 4 and 30? Also no. Okay, what about, let's see, what about, oh, I know, how about 15 and 8? And that's my dog barking. Sorry if you can hear that. Okay, finally I found it. Woohoo! All right, cool. So, right, so this will be 23, so we found it, so that's how we're going to want to do the grouping. Okay, so let me clear some space. And this will be 10x squared minus 15x minus 8x plus 12. Okay, so now we've got it set up, so now we can use grouping. So I actually think this was actually a pretty good case for using grouping, because there's a lot of different combinations, right, to make 10 and 12. So I think this is like actually a good case. So to group, let's see. So I'm going to factor 5x out of the first 2 terms. And that's going to leave me with 2x minus 3. And then out of the second 2 terms, I'm going to factor out 4. So that's going to leave me with 2x minus 3. So just notice that I factored out negative 4. So this becomes positive, and then this has to flip. That's a really common mistake, so just make sure that you did that. And so then this will factor 5x minus 4, 2x minus 3. Now, it's totally possible you could have used trial and error with this. Like I said, I just thought this would be a good candidate for the other technique. The only downside with like using this grouping technique is that you have to remember it, and I find a lot of people forget it. So, you know, it's up to you. I just wanted to present it in case you wanted to see it again, but we'll keep going. Okay, so now we're moving on to 6x squared plus xy minus 5y squared. So this other variable is really not going to cause any stress or drama. So basically, just at the end of each pairing, I'm going to put a y. So let's see. Let's try trial and error here. And actually, you know, I would encourage you to maybe pause and try this one on your own. If you're trying to understand this, remember math is not a spectator sport, so you can pause, try it. Worst that happens is you get it wrong, but then you'll learn more. Okay. So, you know, I'm going to just take a stab in the dark here. Like I said, I didn't work this out in advance. So with 6x squared, you can make it as 6 times 1 or 3 times 2. So I'm just going to do 3 times 2 for a second. And then let's see, so this will be minus 5y and then plus y. Okay, so this is minus 5y squared. There's only one way to make 5y, right? So it's got to be a negative 5 and a positive, sorry. You have negative 5 and 1 or negative 1 and 5, right? So one of these things has to be negative so that this ends up being negative. Hopefully that makes sense. And then I'm going to tack a y on at the end to get that y squared part. Okay, so just notice what happens then if I actually multiply this together. So this is going to end up becoming 6x squared and then 3xy minus 10xy and then minus 5y squared. So remember, trial and error, you know, we want to analyze the mistake, right? We don't want to just like keep swinging at this. So this becomes negative 7x. This is like definitely not what we want. And so if you think about it, so why did this happen? It's because I'm bouncing something off of this 5, right? So when I think of like what other things could I do, it wouldn't make sense to flip-flop the 3 and the 2, right? Because then you're going to have an even bigger number bouncing off of the 5. So when I analyze my error, I'm like, okay, I don't think 3 and 2 is a good guess. So now that tells me, let's try, we'll stick with minus 5y. So let's just try 6x and x. And so now I get 6x squared. Oops, sorry. This should have been x plus 1, my bad. And then this is 6xy minus 5xy minus 5y squared. And so that gets me what I need, right? So this is the right answer. So that's, again, just how you can kind of go through and analyze your trial and error if you're trying that way. Okay, so for this next one, I'm going to use the grouping method one more time just to show it. So, you know, there's a lot of different ways to make 6. There's a lot of different ways to make 18. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply 6 times 18. And, you know, there is no shame in the game of like actually multiplying out the long way, right? So 6 times 8 is 48. So I'm going to actually just put the 4 here. I like to put the number next to this so I can remember what the original number was. It helps me to like check it. So it's just how I multiply. And then I have 6 times 1 plus the 4. So that'll be 10. So this is going to be 108. Okay. So then I have to think about what multiplies to 108 but adds to 31. So notice that I'm not like getting too worried about the x and the y's because I know how to handle that. So, okay, 108. Well, 6 and 18 don't work. So if you're like struggling for like what are the other pairs for like 6 and 18, so So you can actually think of instead, what are the factors of 6 and what are the factors of 18? That can be like a good way to start. So one thing I could do is, so I could say, so here's how my brain works. So I have 6 times 18. So I know for 6, this is 2 times 3 times 18, right? That's how you make 6. So if I wanted to, I could go ahead and multiply these two things together. So 2 times 18 is going to give me, 2 times 18 is 36. And then I still have the 3. So 3 and 36 is one pairing, but it is not the right pairing. So that's like a way you could kind of think through if you're like, oh, I don't know what like goes into this. That's a way you could do that. Let me clear a little space. So it's not glamorous what you have to do to figure this out, but I mean, you really just got to kind of sit here for a minute and just play around with different factors. So as I continue to think through, like, okay, so 6 times 18, so what's a factor of 18? So 9 is a factor of 18. So I could rewrite this as 6 times 9 times 2, and then multiply these together. So I get 12 times 9. Oh, look at that. 12 times 9. Oh, no, that's 21, not 31. Darn. Okay, so that one didn't work. So I'll clear some space again. And so I know, like, when you're also working through this, there's this temptation, like, oh, I just want to use the calculator. But I also want to just state, like, sit with the discomfort of having to actually, like, play around with these numbers. And, you know, if you're like, oh, I want to multiply things out a different way, like I just want to think of like what divides into this, you know, like another way you could figure out what are the factors of 108. You know, you could always just, you know, what's 2 times 108? So that would be 54. Okay, and then what are the factors of 54? Well, that would be 2 times 27. And so this is like another route that you can take this. I'm just bringing this up as like, think of other ways to handle this without using a calculator. Because if you let yourself use a calculator with a problem like this, then you don't develop that numeracy skill that you need that only comes from like playing around and practicing this. And so now that I see, like, here are my factors. So my factors are 2 times 2 times 27. So this is 4 times 27. And hey, that makes 31. So 4 times 27. So that's the one that we want. So I'll clear some space. And so, yeah, so 4 plus 27 equals 31. So we're good to go. So, yeah, I 100% understand if you're like, oh, this is taking me a while. If you just kind of sit with that feeling and be patient and force yourself to keep going through it, you will get faster at it. And as you can see, like, sometimes some of these things just take a little bit longer. And then, you know, oh, okay, now I found it, so we're good to go. And then we can push forward again. So really try to make yourself sit in that, okay? I really want to encourage that. Okay, so now let's rewrite the problem so that we can set it up for grouping. Okay, so the middle term is going to get broken up into 4xy, 27xy. Okay, so there we go. So I would encourage you now to finish this and just hit play when you think you've got it. So let's see. I'm going to factor out 2x. This becomes 3x plus 2y. And then I'm going to factor out 9y. So this becomes 3x plus 2y. So this factors 2x plus 9y, 3x plus 2y. And again, you 100% don't have to use the grouping method. You can just make a guess with trial and error. And sometimes you get lucky. And then also sometimes with trial and error, you just get better at making guesses when you keep analyzing it. So I'm just showing you options and kind of just encouraging you not to get discouraged, right, if you're getting a little frustrated. Okay, so for this last one, so I've talked about this in other videos. So you always want to watch out for GCFs, and then if you have a negative, like we do here, you want to factor it out. So the first thing I notice is that this has a GCF, right, because I see all these Y's and all these X's and everything. So I'm actually going to factor out, let's see, what is the GCF? -4, let's see, x squared is in all of them, and then all of them have y, so the smallest y term is this y. So here's what I'm going to factor out. So then I am left with, let's see, what am I left with? I'm left with 2y squared plus y minus 15. Okay, so let me double check. So I factored out the negative. This is positive, positive. Now this is negative. And okay, this is something I can totally factor. So I would encourage you to pause the video here and try to finish factoring this and then hit play when you're ready. Okay, so I'm going to just do good old trial and error here. So to make 2y squared, it's just 2y and y. And then I'm going to do plus 3 minus 5. So let's see, is that going to get me what I need? No, that will not get me what I need. Oh, wait, I said plus 3. Sorry. Said plus 3, wrote down 6. You know, it happens to the best of us, right? Okay, so then this becomes, so just to check this, 2y squared plus 6y minus 5y minus 15. Yep, I got it right. So there is your final answer. Okay, so hopefully if you were like panicking, sometimes I think people get really panicky with factoring and are like, oh, you know, it's taking me forever. I mean, some of them are hard, you know, and that's okay. And you can do hard things. So don't beat yourself up and don't get too frustrated. And that's it for this video. Consider hitting the like button if you found it helpful. That's useful feedback for me. And yeah, so I will talk to you guys in the next video.